I discovered my fiance's secret escape fund, so I walked away and never looked back. I'm 34, a data analyst with a stable career and a life built on commitment. My father had a saying that always stuck with me. A relationship without trust is like a house built on sand. I never knew how true that was until everything in my life, everything I thought I was building, came down in pieces. It started on a Saturday afternoon. The sun streamed through the living room window, casting a glow on the stack of receipts, bank statements, and financial records laid out in front of me. My fiancée and I were deep into wedding planning, and we had agreed to go over our finances in preparation for merging them after the wedding. I was checking through some joint expenses when I noticed a letter from a bank I didn't recognize. The logo at the top was unfamiliar, and my eyes narrowed as I read the account statement. It was in her name and carried a significant balance. Confusion morphed into disbelief when I found more. Printed email exchanges with her lawyer, the phrases asset protection and contingency fund leapt off the page. A chill settled over me as I pieced it together. This wasn't just a backup savings account. This was a calculated safety net built to nurture for a future that did not involve me. The front door opened, and there she was carrying bags of groceries. Her hair swept back into a loose ponytail. She glanced at me, smiling, but her expression shifted when she saw the papers in my hand. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, the tone too casual for us. "Want to explain this?" I held up the letter. Her eyes dropped to the paper, and for a second, I caught the flicker of panic. She put the bags down, the rustle of plastic, the only sound between us. It's an account I started a while back," she said, straightening. "Just in case, for emergencies." "Emergencies?" I repeated, not buying it. Since when do emergencies come with legal consultations and labeled plans for the future without me? Her jaw tightened. "You're reading into this the wrong way." "Am I?" I tossed a stack of emails and statements onto the coffee table because it sure as hell looks like you've been planning an escape route while we were talking wedding venues. She crossed her arms, eyes shifting as if searching for the right words. "Do you know how many women I know who've ended up blindsided and screwed over after a divorce? They trusted everything to their husbands and then got left with nothing." I stared at her, the woman I'd imagined growing old with, now a stranger. "And so what? You decided that was going to happen here before we even got started. You decided I was someone you couldn't trust. It's not about you." She snapped a defensive edge in her voice. "It's about being smart. It's about protecting myself. I didn't want to end up like Lisa or my mom's friends who—" "Then why not tell me?" I interrupted. "Why keep it a secret? Why involve your parents in it and not talk to the one person it affects the most, me?" Her silence told me everything I needed to know. The weight of her parents' influence, their whispered fears, and cautionary tales had done more than just worry her. It had set her on this path where trust was secondary, where deceit was justified. I took a step back, feeling the distance between us grow by miles. "I can't do this," I said quietly, turning away from the look on her face, a mix of anger and something like regret. "I need time to think." I crashed at my friend Matt's place that night. We'd been through thick and thin since college, and his garage had seen more late-night conversations and existential crises than I could count. He handed me a beer, eyes narrowing as I recounted the whole mess. "Man, that's a punch to the gut," he said. "So, she's been planning for a future where you're not even in the picture?" "Pretty much," I said, staring at the oil streak rag on the workbench. "Her parents weren't on it, too. Can you believe that? People who I thought cared about us, about me, backing her on this." Matt shook his head, muttering a curse. "You need answers, bro. You can't just let this sit." I took his advice. The next evening, I called her parents and asked to come over. They lived close, in a cozy suburban home where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners. Her mother answered the door, eyes avoiding mine, while her father stood stiffly in the hallway. "What's this about?" her father asked, the question hanging heavy with pretended ignorance. "I know about the account," I said, cutting through any pretense. I laid the documents on the coffee table, watching her mother's hands twitch, fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Her father's face tightened, the lines around his mouth deepening. She was just being careful, he said, like that explained everything. Careful? I scoffed. You call plotting behind my back careful? What happened to trust? To honesty? You've both smiled at me, welcomed me into your home, all while knowing she was setting up a plan B. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears, guilt finally showing itself. We didn't mean for it to come to this, she whispered. After what happened to Lisa, we thought it was best. What happened to Lisa has nothing to do with me. I shot back. I'm not her ex, and she's not Lisa. This is about you filling her head with fears and doubts until she couldn't trust the man she's about to marry. Her father cleared his throat, looking away. The room was silent except for the ticking of the old wall clock, each second grinding into my patience. If trust means that little to you all, then there's nothing left to talk about. Days stretched into a week. She called, texted, tried to see me, but I couldn't bring myself to face her. I'd hear from friends who got wind of it through the twisted grapevine of social media and mutual connections. The version she'd spread painted me as an overreacting, paranoid fiancé who'd stormed out over a simple precaution. Dude, did you really break things off over having a savings account? One friend texted. That's insane. You guys were solid. I forwarded them screenshots of the documents, the lawyer emails. The account balance that wasn't just a rainy day fund, but a whole fortress built on mistrust. A slow, painful shift began as the truth made its rounds. Tom, one of my oldest friends, called me. Man, I had no idea. She told us it was nothing serious, just you freaking out. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. Rachel, who'd been friends with both of us, texted. I'm here if you need to talk. I should have known there was more to this. Matt was right. Getting answers helped. The silence from the people who turned on me initially was louder than anything they could have said. After a week of silence, she asked to meet. A part of me resisted, but curiosity and the need for closure won out. We met at a cafe we used to go to after long work days, where the smell of roasted beans and vanilla felt like nostalgia mixed with something bittersweet. She sat across from me, eyes tired, the weight of it all finally visible. I'm sorry, she said, voice hoarse. I never meant to hurt you. I was scared. Scared of what? I said, leaning forward. Of me? Of us? Or was it easier to believe that I'd end up like Lisa's ex and leave you with nothing? Tears filled her eyes, spilling over. I didn't know how to talk about it. I thought if I told you, you'd think I didn't trust you. You're right. I would have, but at least it would have been honest. I said, the anger's still there, but dimmer now. Instead, you let it turn into this lie, and you involved your parents, the people I trusted, to help you hide it. I know, she whispered, voice breaking. It was stupid. I was stupid. I thought I was protecting us both. No, I said. Standing up, you were protecting yourself. And that's not the foundation I can build a marriage on. Her hand reached out, fingers hovering just short of mine. Please, we can fix this. But I shook my head, the last piece of trust crumbling away. This is goodbye. I walked out into the cool evening, the weight of finality settling in. The fallout was messy. Some friends stayed, some drifted. Her parents left voicemails, alternating between apologetic and defensive. We did what we thought was right. Her father's voice would say, I didn't call back. The wedding date came and went, marked only by a sense of quiet resolve. It was no longer a day of mourning what could have been, but a reminder of what wasn't there, trust. I carried on, focused on my work, took up hiking to clear my mind, and learned to play guitar. Life slowly found a new rhythm, one where I knew I'd love again, but with eyes wide open. Months later, I heard she moved away, starting fresh in a new city where nobody knew the story. I felt a fleeting moment of sympathy for her, for the consequences of her choices and the weight of guilt she'd likely carry. But it was just a moment. I couldn't let myself dwell on it. I'd spent enough time being haunted by what-ifs and regrets. There was no grand revelation or sudden peace that washed over me. Just a slow, steady realization that I had dodged a life built on uncertainty. The experience had hardened me, but also taught me to be more discerning. I started valuing open conversations and honesty above everything else. Over time, I began to date again, cautiously at first. Every conversation carried echoes of the past. The unspoken question of whether this new person was hiding a safety net, harboring doubts they'd never voice. But I also realized I couldn't live in suspicion forever. I learned to trust, but it was earned now, not given. People say time heals all wounds, but it's more like time teaches you how to carry them. I carried this one as a reminder that love without trust is just another word for disaster. I'd grown wiser, perhaps a little cynical, but not broken. And as the months turned into a year, I found myself more at peace, content with who I'd become, and knowing that next time, I'd see the sign sooner. I knew now that protecting yourself isn't wrong, but honesty must walk beside it. Because trust, once fractured, leaves cracks that can't always be mended. And that knowledge, painful as it was to earn, was a foundation for the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. I had a $75,000 college fund left by my grandpa, but my parents gave it all to my sister's failing boutique, calling me selfish for wanting it back. I'm 22, male, and this story still feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. Growing up, I always felt like the shadow to my older sister. She's the golden child, always the center of attention, the one my parents bent over backward for. Don't get me wrong, she's smart, driven, and ambitious, but it was like my achievements were never even registered in comparison. I could do everything right, but she'd get a parade for breathing. But I guess I should start at the beginning, when everything seemed normal. I was raised by my parents with the promise that when it was time for college, I wouldn't have to worry. Grandpa had left me a fund, a solid $75,000 that he built over the years specifically for my education. Grandpa and I were close, closer than I ever was with my parents. He made sure that when the time came for me to go to college, I'd have that financial security. It was his dream that I'd go to a good university, get a degree, and make something of myself, and I was ready to do exactly that. I'd worked hard in school, gotten decent grades, and had been accepted into a university that was everything I could have asked for. All I needed was to tap into that college fund, and I was set. At least, that's what I thought. I came home one day after getting my acceptance letter, excited to share the news. I figured my parents would be happy for me, maybe even proud. I mean, isn't that how it's supposed to go? Instead, the mood was weirdly tense. They exchanged glances, and I could feel that something was off. Mom? Dad? So, I got in. The university accepted me, I said, trying to shake off the weird vibe. My mom sighed, a heavy, awkward pause filling the room. My dad looked at the floor, avoiding eye contact. And then my mom said it about the college fund. We need to talk. My heart dropped. What do you mean? She went on to explain that, a few months ago, they'd given the entire $70,000, my entire college fund, to my sister for her business startup, her fashion boutique, to be exact. Apparently, she'd come to them with this amazing business idea that just needed a little capital to get off the ground. A little capital that happened to be every single cent Grandpa left for me. I was stunned, speechless. Wait, you gave it to her? I asked, trying to process it. That money was for my education. She needed it more than you did. My dad chimed in, his voice annoyingly calm, like he was explaining why we were out of milk. Her business is important. You can always take out student loans. Student loans? Was he serious? Grandpa explicitly left that money for me, for college, not for my sister to play entrepreneur with. I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, but I was trying so hard to keep it together. They looked at me like they hadn't just betrayed me in the worst way possible. You didn't even ask me. I said, my voice shaking. That money wasn't yours to give away. My sister was nowhere to be found. conveniently upset while my parents tried to justify what they'd done. My mom just kept saying, "We thought you'd understand," as if I was the unreasonable one. They were so casual about it, so nonchalant, like my future was just a small sacrifice for my sister's success. But the more they tried to justify it, the more it became clear to me. In their eyes, my sister's ambitions would always outweigh mine. They truly believed that her boutique was more important than my education. The betrayal cut deep, but the realization that they didn't even see it as a betrayal, that hurt even more. After that conversation, I couldn't look at them the same way. I was angry, but more than that, I was devastated. I had worked my entire life with the promise that I wouldn't have to worry about crippling debt hanging over my head when I graduated. That promise was gone, all for the sake of my sister's boutique that I wasn't even sure would succeed. I mean, who hands over 75 grand without thinking twice? The worst part was that my sister didn't even seem to care. When I confronted her later, she shrugged and said, "It's just money. You can get loans or something. I'll pay you back eventually." Eventually. That word made my blood boil. There was no eventually in this situation. I needed that money now, and it was gone, just like that. So I did the only thing I could think of. I sued them. I know it sounds extreme. Who sues their own parents? But this wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle, about what Grandpa wanted, and about the fact that they betrayed me without a second thought. That money was legally mine, and they had no right to give it away. I wish I could say that the lawsuit was some easy fix, that it opened their eyes to how wrong they were. But it didn't. Instead, it made everything worse. My parents were furious, calling me ungrateful, selfish, and accusing me of tearing the family apart. My sister, of course, played the victim, saying that I was ruining her dream and trying to sabotage her business. They painted me as the villain, but I didn't care. I was done being the doormat. The case dragged on for months, and in that time, I had to move out. They kicked me out of the house, saying that if I was going to betray the family like this, I wasn't welcome under their roof. So at 18, I found myself couch surfing at friends' places, trying to balance the stress of the lawsuit with finishing up my final year of high school. It was the hardest time of my life, but I refused to back down. I knew what was right, and I wasn't going to let them take away my future because of my sister's entitled demands. Then, the truth came out. During the legal proceedings, my lawyer uncovered something that shook me to my core. The business wasn't doing well. My sister's boutique, the reason they drained my college fund, was failing badly. The money was practically gone, wasted on poor investments, bad marketing, and overpriced merchandise that no one was buying. All 75,000 gone. When this came to light, my parents were forced to face the truth. They had bet my future on my sister's business, and it had failed spectacularly. But instead of apologizing or trying to make things right, they doubled down on their anger toward me. "You're just happy we failed, aren't you?" My mom spat at me during one of the court hearings. "You've always been jealous of your sister." Jealous? I wasn't jealous. I was angry, furious that they'd thrown away my future for a pipe dream. Furious that they were still acting like I was the one in the wrong. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. Legally, the money was mine. And while they couldn't give back what was already lost, they were ordered to pay me restitution. It wasn't the full $75,000, but it was enough for me to start college without being buried in debt. But the victory felt hollow. By then, my relationship with my family was completely shattered. My parents refused to speak to me, and my sister acted like I'd ruined her life. They made me out to be the villain in their story, even though they were the ones who had betrayed me. I ended up moving far away for college, putting as much distance between me and my family as possible. I focused on my studies, determined to make something of myself without their help. It was lonely at times, but I found a new support system in my friends and classmates. And then, karma finally caught up with them. The boutique, it went under. My sister had to declare bankruptcy within 2 years. She tried to keep it going, but the debts piled up too high, and she couldn't keep her head above water. My parents, who had co-signed on some of her business loans, were left footing the bill. They lost a lot. Most of their savings, their financial stability, and eventually their home. The same house they kicked me out of was sold to pay off the debts from the failed boutique. The golden child had failed, and they were left to clean up the mess. I should have felt vindicated, but honestly, I just felt sad for them. They'd thrown away everything for my sister, and now they had nothing to show for it. I didn't reach out, though. I didn't feel like it was my responsibility to save them from the consequences of their own choices. These days, I'm doing okay. I'm in my senior year of college, on track to graduate with honors. I've got a job lined up after graduation, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control of my own life. As for my family, we haven't spoken in years. Every now and then, I hear through mutual contacts that they're struggling, but I've made peace with it. I've learned that sometimes cutting ties is the only way to protect yourself from toxic people, even if those people are family. So yeah, that's my story. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that no one has the right to steal your future, no matter who they are. No matter if they're your parents or your siblings, it doesn't give them a free pass to treat you like you don't matter. That's something I had to learn the hard way. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. I was abandoned by my parents when I was 8. Now, they're begging me come back home, but I'm done. I'm 20 now. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but finally I'm ready to share how my parents sent me away when I was just 8 years old. Looking back, I can see the signs were always there. They never really wanted me around. My parents had me young, barely into their 20s. I watched them struggle to build their lives while raising a kid they weren't ready for. Maybe that's why they always kept me at arm's length, though it took me years to understand that. Back then, I was just a little kid desperately trying to win their love. In public, they put on a good show. All smiles and affection when friends or family were around. But behind closed doors, that's where the truth lived. They'd warn me to keep quiet about how things really were, and I did. What else could I do? I was terrified of making them hate me more than they already seemed to. The constant emotional neglect took its toll. My grades started slipping, and I acted out at school a lot. Looking back, I was probably just trying to get their attention, even if it was negative. When teachers started complaining about my behavior, my parents tried everything to fix me: groundings, punishments, lectures. But I just doubled down on the bad behavior. At least when I was causing trouble, they had to acknowledge my existence. Everything changed around my 8th birthday when Mom got pregnant. For the first time I could remember, they seemed genuinely happy. They announced it at my birthday party, of all places. I was confused at first, but it didn't take long to figure out what it meant for me. A couple weeks later, I walked in on Mom packing my bags. My stomach dropped as I watched her methodically folding my clothes. What? What are you doing? My voice came out barely above a whisper. She didn't even look up. Your father needs to talk to you. I found him in the living room, face set in that stern expression I'd grown to dread. Sit down, son, he said, gesturing to the couch. We need to discuss something important. Why is Mom packing my stuff? He cleared his throat. Your mother and I have decided it would be best if you went to live with your Aunt Sarah for a while. But why? My voice cracked. You're not doing well here, he said flatly. Your grades, your behavior, we want what's best for you. I'll do better. I promise. Please don't send me away. I was crying now, but his expression didn't change. The decision has already been made. You leave next week. I might have been young, but I wasn't stupid. They were getting rid of me to make room for their do-over kid. I threw every tantrum I could think of. I promised to be better, to get perfect grades, to never act up again. I begged them not to send me away from my home, my friends, everything I knew. Even though they'd never show me much love, they were still my parents. I remember one night, maybe a week before they sent me away, trying one last time to connect with my mom. Do you love me? I'd asked in a small voice as she tucked me in, one of the rare times she did. She'd paused, hand hovering over my blanket. Of course I do, she said, but her voice was distant, like she was reading from a script. Now go to sleep. She didn't kiss me goodnight. She never did. But none of it mattered. Their minds were made up. My aunt lived out of state on the family farm she'd inherited. She was my dad's oldest sister, never married, no kids of her own. Looking back, that's probably why she agreed to take me in. The memory of that car ride to her place is still vivid. Me in the back seat, crying and pleading, them in the front, determinedly ignoring my tears. They stayed a few days to help me settle in, but even then, I was inconsolable. My aunt was the only bright spot. She's probably the kindest soul I've ever known. While my parents were there, she kept trying to reassure me that everything would be okay, that I'd learned to love the farm. After they left, she spent weeks trying to get them to call me, to help me adjust. They rarely picked up. Those first few weeks were rough. I basically just cried nonstop. But my aunt never lost patience with me. She was there through every breakdown, every tearful night, every moment of missing home. And slowly, something unexpected happened. I started to heal. Working on the farm gave me purpose. School became easier without the constant stress at home. I made friends, my grades improved, and teachers actually liked me. It was like I could finally breathe. The better my life got, the less I missed my parents. Even holiday visits became merely obligatory. I eventually told my aunt the truth about how my parents had treated me, how they never really wanted me. After that, her attitude toward them changed completely. She became cold, distant. We still saw them at family events, but those interactions were purely surface level. Fast forward 12 years. I'm in college now, studying business so I can take over the farm someday. It's close enough that I can come home on weekends. My sister, the replacement child, is 12 now. From what I hear through family, she's turned out to be quite the handful, with a bad attitude, trouble at school, the works. Karma's funny that way. Last weekend, my aunt called up to me while I was helping fix the tractor. "Someone's on the phone for you," she said, her expression troubled. "Who is it?" She hesitated. "Your parents." My hands froze on the wrench. After 12 years of radio silence, they wanted to talk. "Hello?" I said cautiously into the phone. "Son." My father's voice sounded older, but still carried that same authoritative tone. "It's been a long time." "Yeah, that tends to happen when you send your kid away and never call." "Now, don't be like that." My mother chimed in. I hadn't realized I was on speakerphone. "We've been thinking maybe it's time for you to come home." Their reason? They wanted another shot at parenting. They wanted me to come back after college to prove they could raise good kids. The truth came out pretty quick. My sister was making them look bad, and they wanted to parade me around as evidence they weren't terrible parents. Never mind that they had nothing to do with how I turned out. Never mind that they'd abandoned me the moment something better came along. They actually expected me to help them save face. I shut that down immediately. I told them I wouldn't help them prove anything because they hadn't raised me. My aunt had. They tried arguing that they'd supported us by sending monthly checks, which barely covered anything, but I wasn't having it. When they started calling my sister a failure, I lost it completely. "You're not my parents anymore," I said, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. "My aunt, she's my real family now. She's the one who was there when I cried myself to sleep for weeks after you left. She's the one who came to every school event, who taught me what love actually looks like." "Where were you?" "We sent money," my mother protested. "We supported you." "Money." I laughed bitterly. "You think throwing a few dollars our way makes you parents? You don't get to abandon your kid for 12 years and then claim them when it's convenient." "You ungrateful little dash," my father started. "I'm done." I cut him off. "Don't call here again." They could figure out their own PR problem. Since then, they've been blowing up my phone with guilt trips and manipulation attempts, but I'm done. My aunt backs me completely, telling me to ignore them. She knows the truth. Through family, we found out what triggered all this. At my sister's recent birthday party, she got caught smoking. When they tried to take the cigarette, she threw such a fit that my mom ended up in tears. Their family and friends finally called them out on their terrible parenting, pointing out how they'd spoiled her rotten and never set boundaries. Apparently, They've given her whatever she wanted since day one, including an insane amount of pocket money with zero supervision. The same parents who couldn't be bothered to show me basic affection have let their precious second chance run wild. Now that it's blown up in their faces, they want to use me as proof they're not complete failures at parenting. The irony is everyone knows my aunt raised me. People in the family have even told my parents they were wrong to send me away when I was struggling. But my parents just brushed it off, claiming I was happier with my aunt. They've never been able to think about anyone but themselves. What kills me is how easily they dismiss my sister as a failure while trying to claim credit for my success. She's 12. She needs guidance and counseling, not parents who will throw her under the bus to save face. They sacrificed their relationship with me, supposedly for her sake, but they've managed to fail us both in completely opposite ways. I could hate my sister. She got everything I never did: their love, attention, time, money. But honestly, I just feel sorry for her. All that superficial stuff means nothing without real parenting. Our parents somehow managed to screw up both their kids in totally different ways. I'm grateful for my aunt. She showed me what real family looks like. She taught me that love isn't about money or appearances. It's about being there, about putting in the work, about choosing someone every single day. My parents never understood that, and now they're reaping what they've sown. They can keep trying to guilt me, but I'm done. I know who my real family is, and it's not the people who threw me away when something better came along. It's the woman who took in a broken little boy and helped him become someone he could be proud of. That's what real parenting looks like. That's what real love is. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. I found out my wife and best friend were secretly tracking me. But here's what really happened. I'm 30. I had a loving wife, Michelle, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about trust, love, and loyalty. But what I soon discovered was that nothing in my life was as simple as it seemed. I've been married to Michelle for 7 years now. She's an incredible woman, beautiful, intelligent, and ambitious. When we first met at a mutual friend's birthday party, I was instantly drawn to her confidence and charm. She had this way of commanding attention in any room she entered, and her smile could light up even the darkest spaces. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and during that time, I thought I had found my soulmate. We built what I believed was a perfect life together. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, both had successful careers. I in marketing, she in corporate law, and our friends often commented on how well-matched we seemed. But beneath that polished exterior, there were cracks I hadn't noticed, fault lines that would eventually split our world apart. Michelle was always a little paranoid, but it was something I had learned to handle. When we first started dating, she had a tendency to get jealous, a little too possessive at times. If I was texting someone and smiled at my phone, she'd ask who I was talking to. If I mentioned a female colleague's name too often, she'd grow quiet and distant. I didn't think much of it back then. I chalked it up to her love for me, her fear of losing what we had. She had been hurt before, she told me, by men who didn't value her. She said her ex-boyfriend had cheated on her repeatedly, leaving her with trust issues that she was still working through. And I believed her. I wanted to be different, to show her that not all men would betray her trust. When we got married, things seemed to calm down. At least I thought they had. But looking back now, I realized she hadn't changed. She had just gotten better at hiding her suspicions, at masking her constant need for control. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine business trip. I had to go to Chicago for a 3-day conference, something I'd done many times before. But this time, Michelle's behavior was different. She became increasingly agitated as the trip approached, asking endless questions about my itinerary, who would be there, where I would be staying. While I was away, something strange happened. I had been staying at the Marriott downtown, attending meetings during the day, and having dinner with colleagues in the evening. Everything was normal until I got a call from my coworker who had attended the conference with me. He said he had lost his wedding ring and was worried it had fallen in my car during the ride to lunch earlier that day. He had already returned to his office, and I told him I'd check my car and get back to him. It seemed like such an innocent request at the time. When I went to check my car in the hotel parking garage, I found something that made my blood run cold. As I was searching under the seats for my coworker's ring, my hand brushed against something small and hard, deliberately attached to the underside of the driver's seat. It was a GPS tracker, professionally made and carefully hidden. My first thought was that someone was trying to steal my car. But why would they track it first? It didn't make sense. Then a more disturbing thought crossed my mind. What if someone was tracking me? The paranoia that followed was immediate and overwhelming. I didn't tell anyone about my discovery at first. I needed time to think, to process what this might mean. I took pictures of the device and its location, then carefully removed it. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities. I had no idea who would be behind this. I knew it wasn't my coworkers, and it certainly wasn't any of my friends. The only people who had access to my car were Michelle and, of course, my best friend Kevin. But neither of them seemed like they would ever do something like this. I decided to think it through calmly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just ignore this. I didn't want to assume anything about Michelle, but the timing was too suspicious. Was it possible that she had placed a tracker in my car? Did she really not trust me that much? I decided to confront her. But when I called her, she didn't pick up. That made me even more uneasy. I tried again, and this time she answered on the third ring. I asked her directly if she knew anything about the tracker in my car. For a moment, there was a long pause. Then she said, "I didn't put it there. Why would I do that?" She launched into a stream of questions about whether I was okay, how worried she was about me lately. And despite everything inside me screaming that something was wrong, I found myself wanting to believe her. 2 weeks later, Michelle approached me with what she claimed was evidence of betrayal, but not her own. She had prepared an elaborate story, complete with text messages, doctored photos, and even a report from a supposed private investigator. According to her, my best friend Kevin had been obsessed with me for years. She claimed he had placed the tracker in my car because he was jealous of our marriage and wanted to know my every move. She even showed me screenshots of conversations where Kevin supposedly confessed his feelings to her and photos of him following me to various locations. I decided to meet Kevin alone, without telling Michelle. When I showed him the evidence Michelle had given me, his initial confusion quickly turned to anger, then to resignation. "That's enough," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "If you want to hear the truth, I'll tell you. It was your wife, dude. She asked me to put that tracker in your car. She said she suspected you were having an affair and needed proof. She begged me not to tell you, said it would destroy your marriage if you found out she didn't trust you." Kevin then revealed something that shattered what remained of my world. He admitted that he and Michelle had been seeing each other for months. It had started innocently enough. She would confide in him about her suspicions, and he would listen, trying to defend me. But somewhere along the way, things had changed. He had fallen for her, and she had used his feelings to manipulate him into helping her spy on me. "I know I'm the last person who should be telling you this," he said, pulling out his phone. "But you need to see the real evidence." What he showed me next made me physically ill. There were hundreds of text messages between him and Michelle. Voice messages where she detailed her plans to track my movements and eventually leave me, making it look like I was the one who had destroyed our marriage. When I confronted Michelle with the truth, her reaction was not what I expected. Instead of denial or tears, she became angry. She accused me of turning Kevin against her, of never truly loving her, of making her so insecure that she had no choice but to take extreme measures. "You never understood what I needed," she screamed. "I had to know where you were, who you were with. I couldn't trust anyone else to tell me the truth. The woman I thought I knew, the person I had shared my life with for 7 years, suddenly seemed like a stranger." Her face was contorted with rage and something else, fear, perhaps, or the realization that her carefully constructed world of lies was finally crumbling. I moved out that night, staying with my sister while I figured out my next steps. The following weeks were a blur of lawyers, divorce papers, and painful conversations with friends and family. Some took sides, others tried to stay neutral, but our social circle was irreparably fractured. The divorce proceedings were ugly. Michelle tried to paint me as unstable and paranoid, using my recent therapy sessions as evidence that I was mentally unfit. She claimed that my false accusations about her surveillance were signs of deteriorating mental health. Her lawyer presented a carefully crafted narrative of a loving wife trying to save her troubled marriage from a husband's descent into paranoid delusions. Fortunately, the evidence was on my side. The GPS tracker had been professionally analyzed, revealing fingerprints and purchase records linking it directly to Michelle. The spyware on my phone was traced back to her computer. The private investigator's report provided a documented history of her patterns of manipulation and deceit. Still, she didn't give up easily. She tried to turn our friends against me, spreading rumors about affairs that never happened, mental problems that didn't exist. Some people believed her, but others saw through the lies, especially once the evidence began to mount. It's been 18 months since everything fell apart. The divorce is finally complete, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've moved to a new apartment, started therapy, and am learning to trust again, both others and my own judgment. I started seeing a therapist who specializes in helping people recover from manipulative relationships. He helped me understand that what I had experienced was a form of emotional abuse. She explained how people like Michelle operate, how they choose their targets, and how they maintain their control through a combination of love bombing, gaslighting, and strategic manipulation. Michelle still tries to contact me sometimes, usually late at night when I assume she's been drinking. Her messages swing between anger and remorse, accusations and apologies. I've blocked her number, but she finds ways to reach out through mutual friends or fake social media accounts. Kevin moved to another state, unable to face the consequences of his actions in our small community. He sent me a long letter before he left, trying to explain himself, to apologize for his role in everything. I haven't responded. I'm not sure I ever will. My relationship with Kevin remains complicated. While I understand how he was manipulated, the betrayal still cuts deep. We've had several long conversations over the past year, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of our friendship. He's in therapy too, working through his own guilt and trying to understand how he let himself be used as a pawn in Michelle's games. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I missed with Michelle. The constant need for control, the subtle manipulation, the way she would turn every situation around to make herself the victim. But I don't blame myself anymore. As my therapist says, manipulators like Michelle are experts at what they do. They target kind, trusting people precisely because we want to see the best in others. I've learned that love shouldn't feel like walking on eggshells. It shouldn't come with constant surveillance or elaborate lies. Real love is built on trust, respect, and honest communication. It's about supporting each other's growth, not controlling each other's movements. Sometimes I think about the GPS tracker that started it all. Such a small thing, really, but it led to the unraveling of my entire life. Yet in many ways, finding that tracker was a gift. It forced me to see the truth that had been right in front of me all along. They say the truth sets you free, but they don't tell you how much that freedom can hurt. Still, I'd rather live with painful truth than comfortable lies. The journey through betrayal and manipulation has taught me who I really am and what I'm truly worth. And that's something no one can track, control, or take away from me. In the end, that's the greatest lesson I've learned from this whole experience. True strength isn't about being invulnerable to pain or betrayal. It's about having the courage to keep your heart open, even after it's been broken. It's about choosing trust, not out of naivety, but out of the conscious decision to believe in the possibility of genuine connection. And that's a choice I make every day. I found out my dad's new wife was his mistress during mom's illness. So, I chose peace over his wedding. I'm 25. I've always believed in the importance of family. how they should always have your back, no matter what. But what happens when the family you love, the family you trust, turns on you? That was the reality I faced when my father and his new wife, Kelly, decided to put everything I believed into the test. It all started when I was 17 and my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. The news hit us all like a ton of bricks. My mom had always been the center of our family, the person who held everything together. She was the one who made sure we had family dinners every night, who decorated the house for every holiday, who remembered everyone's birthdays and anniversaries. She was the glue that kept us whole, the warmth that made our house a home. But as her illness progressed, I watched as everything began to fall apart. My dad, who had always been a hard worker, seemed to pull away more and more. He spent increasingly long hours at the office, took more business trips than ever before, and was rarely home when we needed him most. I was left to care for my mom with the help of my aunt and grandmother. Those days were brutal. I'd wake up early to help mom with her medication before school, rush home afterward to make sure she had dinner, and spend my evenings sitting with her through the worst of her chemotherapy symptoms. My homework was often done in hospital waiting rooms or at her bedside while she slept. It was hard, but I knew my mom needed me, so I did everything I could to help. I remember one particularly difficult night when mom was too weak to walk to the bathroom. I called dad repeatedly, hoping he could come home early to help, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Later, he claimed he was in an important meeting, but now I wonder if that was true. Was he already with Kelly then? The thought makes my stomach turn. When my mom passed away 2 years later, I felt a part of me die with her. I was devastated. I had lost the one person who always knew how to make me feel safe and loved. The house felt emptier than ever, haunted by the echoes of her laughter and the spaces where she used to be. And, to make matters worse, my dad wasn't there, not really. He was physically present sometimes, but emotionally, he might as well have been on another planet. During the funeral, he maintained a stoic facade, accepting condolences with practiced grace, but never really breaking down, never really showing the grief I thought he should feel after losing his wife of 25 years. Now I understand why. He had already moved on, hadn't he? Fast forward to now. I'm working on my master's degree and trying to build a life for myself. One evening, my dad called me into the living room. I had just gotten back from a long day of classes and was exhausted, but he insisted it was important. I found him sitting in his favorite armchair, looking both nervous and excited, an odd combination that immediately put me on edge. "I have something to tell you," he said, his fingers drumming against the armrest. "I've been seeing someone and, well, we're getting married next month." The news hit me like a physical blow. Next month? It seemed impossibly soon. He went on to tell me about Kelly, how she was just 2 years younger than him, how she made him happy again. He spoke about her like she was some kind of miracle, and I really tried to be happy for him. After all, shouldn't I want my father to find happiness again? At first, I felt a cautious optimism. Maybe this was good for him, I thought. Maybe he needed someone to help him as he got older. Of course, she could never replace my mom, but perhaps this was a positive step forward. I was living my own life now, had my own apartment, so it wouldn't affect me directly. Or so I naively believed. Then came the wedding preparations. Dad wanted me involved in everything, from cake tastings to venue selections. It was during this time that I received a call from an unknown number. The man on the other end said he had information I needed to hear, something about Kelly and my father. He wanted to meet in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near my apartment. He introduced himself as Mark, Kelly's ex-husband. What he told me next shattered my world completely. According to Mark, my father and Kelly hadn't just recently started dating. They'd been having an affair for years, starting during my mother's final months. He pulled out an envelope full of photographs, my father and Kelly at restaurants, hotels, even vacation spots, all time-stamped during the period when my mother was dying of cancer. The pictures showed them holding hands, kissing, looking happy and carefree, while back at home, my mother was fighting for her life. One photo in particular caught my eye. It was dated just 3 days after my mother had a particularly brutal round of chemotherapy. I remembered that day clearly because I'd spent it holding her hair back as she vomited continuously for hours. Meanwhile, the photo showed my father and Kelly sharing a romantic dinner at an upscale restaurant, champagne glasses raised in a toast. The revelation hit me like a tsunami of betrayal. Every business trip, every late night at the office, every missed family dinner, it had all been lies. While I was taking care of my dying mother, while I was trying to keep our family together, he had been building a new life with someone else. I left the cafe in a daze, the envelope of photos feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my bag. I spent the next few days in a fog of anger and disbelief, barely eating or sleeping. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to confront him. I drove to his house one evening, the envelope of photos clutched in my white-knuckled grip. When he opened the door, he must have seen something in my face because his smile immediately faded. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Now!" He led me to the living room, the same room where he'd told me about his engagement, the same room where we'd spent countless evenings with Mom before she got sick. I pulled out the photos and spread them across the coffee table, watching as the color drained from his face. "How long?" I demanded. "How long were you seeing her while Mom was dying?" He stammered, tried to deflect, but I wouldn't let him. "Don't lie to me," I spat. "Not anymore. I want the truth. Every single detail." Finally, he broke. "It started about 8 months before your mother passed," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I was struggling with everything: your mother's illness, the pressure at work, the mounting medical bills. She was an escape." An escape? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom was dying, Dad. I was 17, taking care of her while you were out, living a double life. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Do you even care?" "Of course I care," he protested. "I loved your mother, I did. But watching her slip away, I couldn't handle it. Kelly helped me cope." "Cope?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you abandoned us when we needed you most. You left me alone to watch Mom die while you were starting a new life with your mistress." He tried to reach for my hand, but I jerked away. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I was weak. I made mistakes. But Kelly and we love each other. Can't you try to understand?" "Understand?" I stood up, shaking with anger. "Understand what?" "That while I was helping Mom to the bathroom, holding her while she cried, watching her waste away, you were having romantic dinners with Kelly. That while Mom was fighting for her life, you were planning your future with someone else?" "No, Dad. I don't understand that at all." Then came the wedding invitation, elaborate and expensive, with its gold lettering and personal message from Dad. "We hope you'll be there to celebrate our special day." The sight of it made me physically ill. How dare they expect me to celebrate their relationship, knowing how it began? I decided then and there that I would not attend his wedding. Instead of witnessing their celebration of betrayal, I spent that day at the lake in the park, my mom's favorite place. She used to take me there for picnics when I was young, and later, on good days during her illness, we'd sit on a bench and watch the ducks, pretending everything was normal. The calls and messages started flooding in almost immediately. Family members I hadn't heard from in months suddenly had plenty to say. They called me childish, selfish, told me I was tearing the family apart. My dad's brothers, aunts, cousins, they all reached out, pleading with me to reconsider. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I composed a lengthy message detailing everything: the affair, Dad's absence during Mom's illness, the years of lies, and sent it to every family member who had tried to guilt me into attending the wedding. Then I blocked them all. I couldn't bear to hear any more excuses or manipulation. The fallout was nuclear. My aunt's fiancé showed up at my door weeks later to tell me that my message had caused chaos in the family. Several relatives had pulled out of the wedding, disgusted by the truth. Kelly had apparently had a meltdown, accusing me of deliberately trying to ruin her special day. The irony of her complaint wasn't lost on me. She had helped ruin the last months I had with my mother, after all. Months have passed since then, and I've maintained my distance from the family. I started therapy to deal with the trauma of not only losing my mother, but also discovering my father's betrayal. It hasn't been easy, but I know I made the right choice. Sometimes, protecting yourself means walking away from toxic relationships, even when those relationships are with family. I've learned that family isn't just about blood ties. It's about trust, respect, and being there for each other when it matters most. My father broke that trust, and no amount of guilt tripping from relatives can make me forget what he did. Some betrayals cut too deep to forgive, and some wounds take more than time to heal. Now, when I visit my mother's grave, I tell her everything. I apologize for not seeing the truth sooner, for not being able to protect her from Dad's betrayal. But I also tell her about my life, my studies, my hopes for the future. And sometimes, when the wind rustles through the trees just right, I can almost hear her telling me that she's proud of me for standing up for what I believe in. I don't know what the future holds, or if I'll ever be able to forgive my father. But I do know that I'm stronger now, more aware of my own worth and the importance of maintaining my principles, even when it means standing alone. Sometimes the hardest decisions we make are the ones that help us grow the most. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.
Everything I did was to be the woman you deserved, my ex excused when I found out her lies. Weeks later, I called her mom after she broke into my house, only to uncover more lies. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, just another day in my routine life. But that day, my world flipped upside down. I'm 27. I've always prided myself on being able to trust the people I care about. For the past 8 months, I had been in a relationship with Emily, whom I believed was everything I had ever wanted. She was beautiful, intelligent, and seemingly had her life together. I met her through mutual friends, and everything seemed perfect. But in the blink of an eye, that image of perfection crumbled, and I was left questioning everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. It started with an offhand comment from my buddy, Ryan, who had known me for years. Ryan worked as a hospital administrator at a different medical center across town, so he was familiar with medical terminology and hospital protocols. One evening, while we were grabbing drinks at our usual spot, he seemed unusually hesitant to bring something up. "So, dude," Ryan began, fidgeting with his beer bottle, "have you ever actually verified Emily's work situation? I mean, she says she's a nurse at Central Memorial, right? But something's been bothering me since that double date last month." I was immediately defensive. Emily had always told me she worked at Central Memorial Hospital as a psychiatric nurse, specifically in their acute care unit. I'd seen her in navy blue scrubs countless times, dropping her off and picking her up from what appeared to be night shifts. She had medical textbooks scattered around her apartment and even a stethoscope hanging by her door. She seemed legitimate in every way. "What do you mean?" I asked, my guard up. "She works there. I've seen her go to work. She's got the scrubs, the badge, everything." Ryan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Look, man, I didn't want to say anything at first, but during that double date, some things just didn't add up. Remember when she was telling that story about a difficult patient? She said she had to administer a code blue. That's not something you administer. It's an emergency response for cardiac arrest. Any real nurse would know that." My stomach tightened, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she just used the wrong word. She was probably tired. Ryan shook his head. "That's not all. She mentioned working in the psychiatric emergency ward on the 5th floor. I have contacts at Central Memorial. They don't have a psych unit on the 5th floor. It's on the 2nd floor, and they call it the acute psychiatric care unit, not the emergency ward." I felt the color drain from my face as Ryan continued. "I also noticed her badge that night. The formatting was wrong. Central Memorial's employee badges have the department listed under the name, not above it like hers does. And the color coding was off. Their psych nurses wear burgundy scrubs, not navy blue." My hands were starting to shake. "Maybe she transferred departments?" "James," Ryan said gently, pulling out his phone. "I did some digging. I called HR at Central Memorial. They have no record of Emily working there, now or ever. And here's the kicker. He showed me his phone screen displaying the nursing license lookup database for our state. I checked the nursing registry. There's no licensed nurse under her name in the entire state. The evidence was mounting, but I still couldn't believe it. She talks about her patients all the time, though. She knows medical stuff. Yeah, about that, Ryan sighed. Remember those stories she told about the schizophrenic patient who thought the CIA was after him? I found the exact same story on a medical drama forum online, word for word. And those medical books in her apartment. I looked closely last time we were there. They're all from 2010 or earlier, and some still have library stickers on them. He pulled up more photos on his phone, screenshots he'd taken of the forum posts that matched Emily's stories exactly, dated years before I'd met her. He even had a picture he'd discreetly taken of her badge during the double date, side by side with a real Central Memorial employee badge. The differences were obvious now that he pointed them out. But I've dropped her off at the hospital, I protested weakly. I've seen her go in. Have you ever actually gone in with her, walk her to her unit? Ryan asked quietly. Because I called security at Central Memorial. The badge she has wouldn't work on their systems. The format is completely wrong. She couldn't have gotten past the lobby with it. My mind was racing. Come to think of it, Emily always insisted on being dropped off at the emergency entrance. She'd never let me walk her in, claiming it was against hospital policy for visitors to enter through that door. She always texted me to pick her up from the same spot, but I'd never actually seen her come out of the building. I bet you $100 she doesn't work there, Ryan said firmly. In fact, I bet she's never worked as a nurse anywhere. Think about it, have you ever met any of her coworkers? Has she ever had to go in for an emergency shift? Have you ever seen her actually use any of that medical equipment she has? The reality was crashing down around me. All those nights I thought she was working shifts, all those stories about helping patients, all those times she'd given medical advice, had it all been a lie? The woman I thought I knew, the relationship I thought was built on trust and honesty, was starting to look like an elaborate facade. But why, I asked, more to myself than to Ryan. Why would someone lie about something like this? Ryan looked at me sympathetically. I don't know, man, but you need to confront her about this. These aren't small inconsistencies. This is a pattern of deliberate deception, and if she's lying about this, what else might she be lying about? I sat there, staring at my beer, feeling like my whole world had been turned upside down. The evidence was overwhelming, but accepting it meant accepting that the woman I'd fallen in love with might not even be real. The worst part wasn't just the lie about her job. It was the realization that she'd maintained this facade for 8 months, creating elaborate stories and excuses, all while looking me in the eye and claiming to love me. The question now wasn't just about confronting her. It was about confronting the truth about our entire relationship. How much of what I knew about Emily was real, and how much was just another carefully crafted lie. Update 1. The next few days after my conversation with Ryan were a blur of confusion and disbelief. I didn't want to accuse Emily of anything without proof, but I couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. I decided to quietly investigate, watching her more closely and paying attention to details I'd previously overlooked. The more I looked, the more inconsistencies I found. I started asking subtle questions about her work, trying to get more specific details about her shifts and the hospital. Emily always had an answer ready, but I began noticing how she would deflect certain questions or change the subject when the conversation got too specific. When I asked about her coworkers, she'd give vague descriptions but never names. When I suggested meeting up with her work friends, she'd claim they were too busy or worked different shifts. One evening, I decided to surprise her at work. She had told me she was working the night shift in the psych unit, so I brought her favorite coffee and some snacks. But when I arrived at Central Memorial Hospital and asked for Emily at the nurse's station, they had no record of her. The security guard even checked their employee database, nothing. I sat in my car in the parking lot for hours, watching the entrance where she usually entered for her shifts. She never showed up. But it wasn't until I overheard a conversation between Emily and her friend that the truth really started unraveling. I was in the next room at Emily's apartment, and they thought I couldn't hear them. Emily was talking about her work, but the details were completely different from what she'd told me. I just can't keep doing this, her friend was saying. James seems like a really good guy. He doesn't deserve to be lied to like this. You don't understand, Emily replied, her voice tight with emotion. He would never stay with someone like me, just a phlebotomist at the county general. You should see how his eyes light up when I tell him about saving patients in the psych ward. He thinks I'm this amazing, accomplished woman, if he knew the truth. But why lie about being a nurse specifically? Because that's what he respects, Emily's voice cracked. You should hear how he talks about his sister the doctor, his cousin the nurse practitioner. His whole family is in medicine. The first time we met, he was so impressed when I said I was a psychiatric nurse. I could see it in his eyes, finally, someone who matched his standards. I couldn't take that back. The conversation continued, revealing layers of manipulation I hadn't even considered. Emily had researched psychiatric nursing extensively, memorizing terminology and patient care protocols. She'd bought used medical textbooks and scrubs to create a convincing backdrop. She'd even paid someone to make her a fake hospital ID badge. My heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. But what hurt even more was hearing her describe how she'd manipulated me emotionally. She would intentionally create drama about difficult patients or challenging shifts, knowing I would comfort and support her. She'd make up stories about saving lives, watching my reactions to gauge which tailies impressed me most. She even admitted to scheduling fake night shifts when she wanted space or was seeing someone else. The next time I saw Emily, I couldn't keep it inside any longer. I had to confront her with the truth. Emily, I said, my voice shaking despite my attempts to stay calm, we need to talk about your job, about you being a nurse. Her expression shifted instantly. I could see the panic flash across her face before she composed herself. What about it? I know you're not a nurse at Central Memorial, I said quietly. I know you're a phlebotomist at County General. I know everything's been a lie. There was a long, heavy pause before she crumpled, tears streaming down her face. But even in her confession, the manipulation continued. She wrote a tale about failing out of nursing school due to a traumatic brain injury, about how she'd always dreamed of being a nurse, but life had been unfair to her. She claimed she'd only lied because she was afraid of losing me, because she thought I would never accept her as she was. You don't understand, she sobbed. I had to be perfect for you. I saw how you looked at me when you thought I was a nurse, with respect, with admiration. I couldn't bear to see that disappear. I couldn't handle you looking at me the way everyone else does. But as she continued talking, her story began to spiral. She started making grandiose claims about being a medical genius who could perform surgeries if given the chance. She insisted she knew more than most doctors, that she had special healing abilities that the medical establishment refused to recognize. She described elaborate conspiracy theories about why she wasn't allowed to practice medicine. I'm better than any nurse at that hospital, she declared, her eyes wild. I have gifts they can't understand. They're just jealous of my abilities. That's why they won't let me practice. I sat there stunned as I realized this went far beyond simple deception. Emily hadn't just lied about her job. She had created an entire alternate reality where she was the brilliant, accomplished woman she thought I wanted. She had convinced herself of her own lies, building them up layer by layer until she couldn't distinguish truth from fiction. The manipulation had been constant and calculated. She had studied my reactions, learned what impressed me, and crafted her persona accordingly. She had used my respect for healthcare workers, my family's medical background, and my desire for an equal partnership to keep me invested in her fabricated life. Every story, every detail, every dramatic moment had been carefully designed to maintain her hold on me. I felt sick to my stomach, not just because of the lies, but because I realized how deeply she had embedded herself in my life through this deception. She had met my family, shared holidays with us, been included in future plans, all while living a complete lie. I did it all for you, she was saying, reaching for my hand. Everything I did was to be the woman you deserved. Don't you see? I became what you wanted. But I couldn't listen anymore. I stood up, backing away from her desperate grab for my hand. This wasn't love. It was a calculated performance designed to keep me trapped in her web of lies. The woman I had fallen for didn't exist. She was a character Emily had created, a role she had played to perfection until reality finally caught up. I left her apartment that night and never went back. I blocked her number, her email, her social media. But the damage was done. It took months of therapy to process the manipulation and rebuild my ability to trust. Emily had shown me how easily someone could craft a perfect facade and how devastating it could be when that facade finally crumbled. Update 2. Hey, I know you have been waiting to hear what happened next after I broke up with Emily, so buckle up. The fallout from the confrontation spiraled into something far darker than I could have imagined. One evening, when I came home from work one day to find her sitting in my shower, fully clothed, holding my terrified cat. She wasn't even running the water. She was just sitting there in the dark, staring at the wall with vacant eyes. The sight chilled me to my core. This wasn't just a desperate ex. This was someone who had completely lost touch with reality. I called the police immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. But by the time they arrived, Emily had vanished, leaving only wet footprints on my bathroom floor and a note that read, "I can be whoever you want me to be." The police took my statement, but without evidence of forced entry. She had apparently kept a copy of my spare key. There wasn't much they could do. That's when I knew I had to contact her family, despite Emily's claims that they had cut her off a year ago. Getting their contact information wasn't easy. Emily had been careful to keep her family and her fabricated life separate. But her friend finally gave me her mother's number, revealing yet another lie. Emily hadn't been cut off by her family. She had cut them off to prevent them from exposing her lies. When I called Emily's mother, the truth came pouring out. Emily had been struggling with identity issues and compulsive lying since her teens. She would create elaborate personas, completely immersing herself in fictional lives until they inevitably fell apart. The nursing fantasy wasn't new. She had previously convinced a different boyfriend she was a pediatric surgeon, going so far as to buy medical equipment and set up a fake office. Emily's mom broke down crying as she explained how they had tried to get Emily help multiple times, but she would always run away when the truth started catching up to her. The last time they had seen her was at a family intervention, where Emily had stormed out screaming that they were all jealous of her medical genius. That was over a year ago, around the time she met me. Emily's brother called me a few hours after I spoke with her mom. He was booking a flight out immediately, desperate to find his sister before she hurt herself or someone else. Some of my friends criticized me for involving Emily's family, suggesting I was overstepping boundaries. But after learning about her history of escalating behavior and psychological issues, I knew I couldn't just walk away. This wasn't just about a relationship ending. It was about someone who needed serious help before her fantasies led to something truly dangerous. The whole experience left me questioning everything I thought I knew about trust and relationships. Emily hadn't just lied about her job. She had constructed an entire false identity, complete with elaborate backstories, props, and supporting documentation. She had manipulated not just me, but everyone around her, creating a web of deception so intricate that it took dozens of people comparing notes to finally see the full picture. Update 3. Over the next few days, I tried to move on, but Emily's presence was still haunting me. Her mom kept me updated about Emily's situation, though I had mixed feelings about staying involved. After the shower incident, Emily had been found wandering around the hospital where she claimed to work, trying to access restricted areas. Security had called the police, leading to an involuntary psychiatric hold. The initial evaluation was revealing. Emily had been diagnosed with a combination of disorders, including delusional disorder and histrionic personality disorder. The psychiatrists discovered she had been previously hospitalized 3 times in different states, each time under similar circumstances. Her elaborate lies would unravel, leading to a psychological break. During her 72-hour hold, Emily refused to acknowledge any mental health issues. She insisted she was being persecuted by jealous colleagues who couldn't handle her medical brilliance. When confronted with evidence that she had never attended medical school, she became agitated, claiming there was a conspiracy to discredit her. She even tried to diagnose other patients in the ward, leading to several confrontations with hospital staff. After her release, Emily immediately reached out to me. Her messages were erratic, switching between pleading for reconciliation and making wild accusations. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I'll show you all what a real medical genius looks like. You never believed in me. You're just like the others, trying to keep me from my destiny. I've been offered a position at Johns Hopkins. They recognize my potential, unlike you. Why won't you answer me? Are you working with them to destroy my career? I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing more to say. I had already done everything I could to help, but at this point, I had to accept that Emily wasn't the person I thought she was. I had to protect myself, and that meant cutting her out of my life completely. It wasn't easy, but after months of dealing with the chaos Emily brought into my life, I finally made the decision to start fresh. I moved into a new apartment, surrounded myself with supportive friends, and focused on my career. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life piece by piece. The experience taught me a harsh lesson. Sometimes the person you trust the most is the one who can hurt you the deepest. But it also taught me that I'm stronger than I realized. I learned to trust my instincts and to walk away from toxic situations, no matter how hard it is. I also learned that mental health is not something to take lightly. Emily's mental breakdown wasn't just a result of her lies. It was a sign of deeper issues that had been ignored for too long. I hope that she gets the help she needs, but I can't be the one to fix her. I have to focus on myself now. Through this painful experience, I've learned to set boundaries, trust my gut, and walk away from relationships that no longer serve me. It's been a long road, but I'm finally in a place where I feel like I'm in control of my life again.
"You're trying to buy proof that you're worth something," she said, after I covered her rent, phone, and groceries. I wasn't her boyfriend, just her budget plan. So I stopped paying and walked out without a word. Before I go any further, let me tell you who I am. I'm Elias Johnson, 26 years old, software developer at a mid-sized tech company downtown. Not exactly thrilling work, but it pays the bills and then some. Actually, it pays them really well. After 5 years of climbing the ladder, I'm pulling in about $95,000 a year, plus bonuses. Not bad for a guy who used to get laughed at for thinking he could ask a girl to a school dance. I've got my own apartment, a decent car, and enough left over each month to actually save something. After growing up watching my parents stress about every grocery bill, counting coupons like they were gold coins, financial stability feels like a superpower. My mom used to make us turn off lights when we left a room for 30 seconds. My dad drove the same beat-up Honda for 12 years because it still runs fine. Now I can buy organic groceries without checking my bank balance first. I can order takeout on a Tuesday just because I don't feel like cooking. It's freedom. The second time I saw Sierra, she was in the lobby checking her mail. I was coming back from a grocery run, arms full of bags from the expensive organic place down the street. Yeah, I know, but when you can afford it, why not? The bags had that upscale market logo plastered all over them. Not exactly subtle. "Hey neighbor," she said, looking up from a stack of what looked like bills. Her expression was a little stressed, the way people get when they're adding numbers in their head and not liking the total. "How's it going?" "Good, just grabbed some dinner stuff." I shifted the bags, trying not to look like I was showing off, but also not exactly hiding the fact that I just dropped $60 on groceries for one person. "You settling in okay?" "Yeah, mostly." She glanced at the envelopes in her hand. I caught a glimpse of red lettering on one, the kind that usually means final notice, then back at me. "Mind if I ask what you do for work? I'm trying to figure out how everyone here affords rent. This place isn't exactly cheap." She laughed when she said it, but there was something underneath, like she was genuinely puzzled by how people manage to make it work. The rent here was pretty steep. I knew because I'd shopped around plenty before settling on this place. But for me, it was worth it for the location and the fact that the building was actually maintained. I told her about the software job, keeping it casual. Tech company downtown. Nothing too exciting, lots of sitting at computers, fixing other people's code mistakes. But it's stable work and the pay is decent. I noticed something just for a second. Her eyes got a little brighter when I mentioned working in tech, like she was filing that information away. Her whole posture shifted slightly, more interested. "That's cool," she said, and now her smile seemed warmer somehow. "Stable work, I bet. good benefits and everything. My girlfriends back home, they always complain about dating guys who can't even afford to split dinner checks. Such a turnoff, like I'm not asking for much, but a little financial responsibility goes a long way. She laughed again like it was just casual conversation, but something about the way she said it stuck with me. The way she emphasized financial responsibility like it was really important to her. Which, okay, fair enough, money stress sucks. I knew that better than most. What about you? I asked. What kind of work do you do? Her smile flickered just barely. The brightness dimmed a little. Oh, just this coffee shop thing for now, downtown near the university. Tips are okay, but the hourly is pretty standard service industry stuff. She shrugged. Pretty standard post-grad struggle, right? But I'm looking for something better, something with actual career potential. I nodded, but I was thinking about that moment when her eyes lit up. Probably nothing. Probably just normal conversation, but it was there. What did you study? I asked. Marketing with a minor in communications. She brightened up again. I'm hoping to get into digital marketing eventually. That's where the real money is, All those tech companies need people who understand social media strategy and brand development. The way she said real money caught my attention. There was something hungry in her voice just for a moment. That makes sense, I said. Tech companies are always looking for good marketing people. The pay can be pretty solid, too. Really? She leaned forward slightly. Like ballpark, what kind of solid are we talking about? I gave her a rough range, maybe 40 to 60,000 starting out, more with experience. Her eyes definitely got brighter then. That's really good, she said. Way better than slinging coffee for $8.50 an hour plus whatever tips people feel like leaving. We chatted for another few minutes about nothing in particular, but I found myself studying her face. She was definitely pretty, not in that Instagram-filtered way, but genuinely attractive. The kind of girl who looked good in whatever she threw on, but there was something else there too. A calculating quality I hadn't noticed before. When we finally said goodbye and headed to our respective apartments, I couldn't shake the feeling that our conversation had been some kind of interview. Like she'd been figuring out whether I was worth her time. But maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just being friendly, just making conversation. Maybe I was still so used to being the guy nobody wanted to talk to that I couldn't believe someone might actually be interested in me for normal reasons. Either way, I found myself hoping I'd run into her again soon. There was something about her that drew me in, even with those little moments that made me wonder, maybe especially because of them. The first crack came in early February. Sierra's little brother came to visit for winter break. Tyler, 15, all elbows and attitude. Nice enough kid, but he had this habit of asking the kind of questions that made me uncomfortable. So you guys are dating? He asked on his second day there. We were all sitting in Sierra's living room eating pizza I'd ordered for everyone. Sierra looked at me, then back at Tyler. It's complicated. Complicated how? We're figuring it out, she said, but something in her voice felt off. Like she was buying time. Tyler nodded like that made perfect sense. He seems cool, and he's got his shit together, right? Like financially. I nearly choked on my pizza. Sierra kicked Tyler under the coffee table. Don't be rude, she hissed. What? I'm just saying it's nice that Sierra found someone who can, take care of her. Take care of her. The words sat wrong in my stomach. Later that week, Sierra's friend Jess came over. I'd met her a few times, loud, confident, the kind of girl who said exactly what she was thinking. They were getting ready to go out, and I was helping Tyler with some homework at the kitchen table. Girl, you are set, I heard Jess say from Sierra's bedroom. Rich boyfriend who spoils you, living the dream. Rich boyfriend, that stopped me cold. He's not rich, Sierra laughed. He just helps out sometimes. Honey, he bought you those expensive headphones, covers half your expenses, takes you out every weekend. That's boyfriend behavior, rich boyfriend behavior. I couldn't hear Sierra's response, but Tyler looked up from his math worksheet and raised an eyebrow at me. You okay, man? You look weird. Fine, I mumbled, just tired. But I wasn't fine. Because suddenly, things started making sense in ways I didn't want them to. The way Sierra always let me pay for dinner but never offered to split it. How she'd mention needing something, makeup, groceries, whatever, and I'd pick it up while I was out anyway. How she'd text me when her phone bill was due, or when her car needed gas, always with some excuse about being short this week. I told myself I was overthinking it. That's what people do when they care about each other, right? They help out. They take care of each other. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a Saturday in March. Sierra wanted to go to the annual spring festival downtown, live music, food trucks, the whole deal. I just paid rent for both of us like always, and covered her phone bill after she'd mentioned it was overdue like always. I had $66 left in my checking account until payday on Tuesday. Come on, Sierra said, pulling on my arm as we stood outside the festival gates. It's once a year. Don't kill the vibe just 'cause of money. I tried to explain it gently. Babe, I just covered your rent advance and the phone thing. I've got enough for today, but I want to make sure we don't get caught short before Tuesday. Her face changed. The smile disappeared, replaced by something colder. Wait, what? You covered my rent when? This morning, $50 early so we wouldn't stress about it later. Who asked you to do that? I blinked. I was helping out like always. Like always, her voice got sharper. What's that supposed to mean? Tyler was standing right there. Just two. This wasn't the place for this conversation, but Sierra didn't seem to care about that. I just meant, we help each other out. I cover some stuff, you cook for me, we're a team. Sierra's laugh was bitter. Oh, I get it. You think because you throw money around I owe you something. That's not what I said. You think you're my dad or something. Next time you want to help out, ask first. The words hit like a slap. I felt Tyler and Jess watching us, felt other people starting to stare. My face burned. I was just trying to help, I said quietly. Nobody asked you to be my hero, Elias. She stormed toward the festival entrance, leaving me standing there like an idiot. Tyler patted my shoulder awkwardly. She'll cool off, he said. She's just proud, But I barely heard him because that's when I saw it. Sierra had left her phone on the picnic table where we'd been sitting. The screen was lit up with a text from Jess, who was still standing right next to me. He's being dramatic over $50. It's giving nice guy guilt trip vibes. I stared at those words until they burned into my brain. Nice guy guilt trip. Like I was some manipulative asshole trying to control her with money. 20 minutes later, when Sierra came back with nachos and acted like nothing had happened, I didn't say anything about the text, but something inside me had shifted. Something had broken loose. The next day, I received a message. From Nate, a guy I barely knew, someone in our media class who hung out with Sierra sometimes. We'd talked maybe twice. He'd seen what happened and apparently felt bad for me. The message just said, "Hey, dude. I think you should see this." Attached was a screenshot, a photo from Sierra's private Instagram story posted late the night before. She had written, "Still single in spirit." Underneath, Nate had added, "She said the same thing at the festival too. When someone asked if you were her boyfriend, she kinda hesitated and laughed. Said kind of, he's sweet. He's helping me out a lot right now. Just thought you deserved to know." I stared at the message for a long time. Read it twice, 3 times, helping me out, not boyfriend, just a guy who pays the bills. And suddenly, the fight at the gate started to make more sense. Sierra hadn't blown up because I brought up money. She blew up because I reminded her of what she was doing. I hadn't done what she wanted that day. I'd drawn a line, and instead of owning up to the guilt she probably felt, she projected it all back onto me. Made me out to be controlling, manipulative, like I was using kindness to hold something over her head. And I think I finally saw it for what it was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the words "still single in spirit" over and over. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That maybe she'd posted it as a joke, or maybe it was old, or maybe I was just being dramatic like her friend Jess said. The next afternoon, she stopped by with takeout from our favorite Vietnamese place. She handed me a little bag with a sheepish grin. "Also got you something dumb," she said. "Saw it at the thrift store. Figured you'd like it." Inside was a soft gray hoodie my size, still folded. She added, "You need more comfy clothes." I smiled. "Thanks, you didn't have to." That was it. And I let whatever happened yesterday go. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I didn't want to ruin something good over a misunderstanding. I didn't want to be that guy, suspicious, bitter, broken from the past. I kept letting things go. I should have walked away after the Instagram story. Should have stopped paying her rent, stopped buying her things, stopped pretending we were building something real. Instead, I gave her one more chance to break me completely. It was 2 weeks later. Another night out, this time to some bar downtown where her coworkers were celebrating someone's promotion. Sierra insisted I come along, said it would be fun, said she wanted me to meet everyone. I should have known better. The ride there was already weird. Sierra kept making little jokes about money, about me being careful with cash, about how I always wanted to budget everything. Tyler was in the backseat with one of Sierra's friends, and they were all laughing along. "Don't give Elias the cash for parking," Sierra said as we pulled up to the bar. "He'll ask for a receipt and a tax return tomorrow." Everyone cracked up. I forced a smile, but it felt like swallowing glass. Inside the bar, it got worse. Every time someone wanted to order another round, Sierra would glance at me with this look like she was waiting for me to protest. When I didn't say anything, she'd make some comment about how generous I was being tonight. I was trying to be cool about it, trying to prove I wasn't the uptight, money-obsessed guy she was painting me as. But every joke felt like a small cut. Then came the moment that destroyed me. We were at a table near the back, and I was looking at the menu, trying to figure out what I could afford without going completely broke before payday. Sierra was watching me, and I could see that familiar irritation building in her face. "Y'all see now why I say he kills the fun," she announced to the table. The words hung in the air. Everyone went quiet for a second, then started laughing, that uncomfortable kind of laughter when someone said something that crossed a line, but nobody wants to call it out. I felt my chest tighten, felt that old familiar shame creeping up my throat. I started to stand up to get some air, to get away from the stares and the laughter. That's when Sierra delivered the kill shot. "What are you doing?" she asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Walking away because I called you out." I turned back to look at her. She was smiling, but it wasn't friendly. It was sharp, predatory. "I'm just going to get some air." "Right, because God forbid someone points out your issues." She leaned forward, her voice getting louder. "You do all this shit for people, paying for things, buying gifts, playing the hero, and for what? To prove that someone could actually love you." The table went dead silent. Those words hit me like a physical blow, because she knew. She knew about high school, about the laughter, about Marcus wiping tears from his eyes while my friends howled at the idea that Amanda Morrison might dance with me. I told Sierra that story one night when we were lying in her bed, both of us half asleep and honest in the dark. Told her about feeling invisible, about building myself into someone worth loving. She'd held my hand and said it broke her heart that anyone had made me feel that way. Now she was using it as a weapon. My eyes started burning. My throat closed up. I couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stand there while everyone stared at me like I was exactly the pathetic loser I'd spent years trying not to be. Sierra kept going. "That's what this is, right? All the money, all the gifts. You're trying to buy proof that you're worth something." I should have said something. Should have defended myself or called her out or told her to go to hell. But at least for the first time I didn't freeze. I looked straight at her. No yelling, no sarcasm, just one sentence. "Thanks for finally showing me who I am in your eyes." Her face shifted, just a flicker. Not guilt. Not regret, just surprise, like she hadn't expected me to speak at all. Then I turned around and walked out of the bar. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before she came outside. "Elias, come on, I was just joking around." I didn't look at her, couldn't. "You used my worst memory against me," I said quietly, "in front of strangers. I didn't mean it like that. You knew exactly what you were doing." She got in the passenger seat and we drove home in silence. When we got back to our building, I walked straight to my apartment without saying goodnight. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the whole day in bed, staring at the ceiling. My roommate Mark came home around 6 and found me still lying there. "Dude, what's wrong with you? You look like hell." I told him everything. The rent payments, the gifts, the Instagram story, the bar, all of it. Mark listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat quiet for a long time. "Man," he finally said, You're in love with someone who thinks you're a bank account. She's not, she is, though. Think about it. When's the last time she did something for you that cost her anything? Time, money, effort. I tried to remember. Came up empty. She cooks for me sometimes. With groceries you bought, we spend time together. Watching movies on the Netflix account you pay for in the apartment you subsidize. The words hit home because they were true. For 6 months, I'd been pouring myself into Sierra, my money, my time, my heart, and getting back just enough attention to keep me hooked. She doesn't love you, man, Mark said gently. She loves what you do for her. And that's not the same thing. For the first time since the bar, I didn't try to defend her. I didn't make some big dramatic exit. Didn't leave a note or demand an apology or try to make Sierra understand what she'd done to me. I just stopped. Stopped paying her rent. Stopped buying her things. Stopped answering her texts right away. Stopped being available every time she needed something. For 3 days, nothing happened. No calls, no knocks on my door, no "Hey, are we okay?" messages. Sierra went about her life like I'd never been part of it. On the 4th day, I got a text. "Hey, Patterson says my unemployment assistance got denied this month. Do you know anything about that?" I stared at that message for a long time. She still didn't know I'd been paying her rent. Still thought it was some government program. Still had no idea how much of my life I'd rearranged around hers. I texted back. No idea. Maybe call the office. That was it. No explanation, no confession, no final confrontation where I laid out everything I'd done for her and demanded gratitude. Because here's what I'd finally figured out. Sierra didn't owe me love just because I'd spent money on her. But I didn't owe her my heart just because she'd let me. A week later, I started packing. I found a new place across town. More expensive, but I could afford it now that I wasn't supporting 2 people. Mark helped me load the truck on a Saturday morning while Sierra was at work. "You gonna tell her you're leaving?" he asked as we carried my couch down the stairs. "Nope. She'll figure it out eventually. I'm sure she will." I left my key with Patterson and drove away from that building without looking back. No forwarding address, no goodbye note, no last-ditch effort to make Sierra see what she'd lost. 3 weeks later, I saw her Instagram story. A picture of her with some new guy, tall, good-looking, the kind of confident smile I'd never been able to pull off. The caption read, "New vibe, no guilt. Just fun, no guilt. Just fun." That told me everything I needed to know. See, I'd spent months thinking I wasn't enough for Sierra. Not handsome enough, not interesting enough, not worthy of the love I was desperate to give her. I'd twisted myself into knots trying to prove my value through my wallet, through my willingness to sacrifice, through sheer force of effort. But that was never the problem. The problem was that Sierra had never seen me as a person worth loving. She'd seen me as a resource worth using, a convenience worth keeping around as long as the benefits outweighed the hassle. I wasn't her partner, I was her emotional Velcro, useful until it stuck too hard. Some people don't fall in love, they fall into comfort, into attention, into control. They find someone willing to give everything and mistake that willingness for love itself. I wasn't loved. I was used gently. And that's the worst kind of heartbreak there is. Because at least when someone hurts you on purpose, you know where you stand. When someone uses you kindly, when they smile while they take and take and take, it's easy to confuse that taking for tenderness. It took me 6 months and $3,000 to learn the difference. But I learned it. And now, when I meet someone new, I don't lead with what I can give them. I lead with who I am. I don't try to buy love with rent payments and birthday gifts and constant availability. Because love, real love, isn't something you earn through good behavior. It's something you find with someone who sees you, values you, chooses you for reasons that have nothing to do with your bank account. Sierra taught me that, even if she didn't mean to. The girl I thought was the first to ever stay was actually the first to show me it's better to be alone than to be with someone who only keeps you around for what you provide. That's a lesson worth every dollar it cost me to learn.